Lesson 1-4. In this lesson, we're going to focus on comparing fractions when the denominators are not alike. The book has a few conceptual strategies that can come in handy from time to time, but at the end of the day, this task of comparing fractions, in my opinion, really comes down to being able to identify a common denominator and then use what you've already learned about equivalent fractions. What you do to the bottom, you do to the top. What you do to the top, you do to the bottom, in order to rewrite one or both of the fractions with the same denominator in order to compare them. Let's get started. Number one, we're comparing 3/5 with 2/5. Inside the circle, we're either going to put an equal sign, a greater than symbol, or a less than symbol. Remember, with the greater than and less than symbols, the symbol will open towards the greater of the two fractions. Now, in the case of comparing 3/5 with 2/5, as has been shown here in the visual model, we can clearly see that 3/5 is greater than 2/5. 3/5 is the sum of 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5. 2/5 is the sum of 1/5 plus 1/5. Clearly, visually, we can see that 3/5 is greater than 2/5. When the denominators match, it's as simple as just comparing the numerators. 3 is greater than 2. Done. Now, looking at number 2, notice right away that the denominators don't match. We're comparing 3/5 to 3/4. In this case, looking at the visual model, we already know where this is going. 3/4 is going to turn out to be slightly greater than 3/5. Or in other words, if you're reading this from left to right, 3/5 is going to be less than 3/4. But let's say that it's not that easy for us on our own with pencil and paper to recreate this sort of an accurate visual model. Then what? Well, then, in my opinion, and for the most part, the key is being able to determine a common denominator and then rewrite one or both of those fractions with that common denominator. Let me show you what I mean. The two denominators that have been presented to us here are 5 and 4. Start with the larger of the two denominators, in this case, the 5. Ask yourself, is 5 a multiple of 4? In other words, if you think about your 4 times facts, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, and so on, can I take 4 and multiply it by something to get 5? Of course, the answer is no. So 5 on its own won't work for 4. Now, don't give up on 5. 5 won't work, but one of its multiples surely will. Here's where knowing those time facts is going to come in handy, and if you need a times chart by your side, please have one ready. I'm going to go through my 5 times facts. In fact, I'm going to make a little list for them on the side, and I'm going to ask myself to stop when I get to a multiple of 5 that is also a multiple of 4. We already determined 5's out. How about 10? Can I take 4 and multiply it by something to get 10? No. How about 15? Can I take 4 and multiply it by something to get 15? No. How about 20? Can I take 4 and multiply it by something to get 20? Ding, 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 ding. Yes, I can. 20 works. And if it helped me to make a similar list of multiples for 4, I could do that. But let me rewind my steps here. The good news is that I have found the lowest common multiple that 5 and 4 share, and that is 20. 20 is going to be my common denominator, and we'll use it in a moment. But first, I want to rewind my steps to make sure that my process was clear. When the denominators of the two fractions do not match, Look at the larger of the two denominators first, in this case, the 5. Ask yourself, will the 5 on its own work for 4? In other words, can I take 4 and multiply it by something to get 5? In this case, no. Since that's the case, don't give up on 5. Just start going through your multiples of 5 until you find the first one or the lowest multiple that also works for 4. Now, let's rewrite this using what we know of equivalent fractions. We're going to rewrite 3/5 as something over 20. We're going to rewrite 3/4 as something over 20. Remember, what we do to the bottom, we do to the top. Here, if I start with the denominator of 5 and want to end up with the denominator of 20, I must multiply by 4. We'll do the same to the top. And of course, 3 times 4 will get us 12. 3/5 is equivalent to 12 over 20. Now, same steps over here. If I start with a denominator of 4 and want to end up with a denominator of 20, I must multiply the bottom by 5. Let's do the same to the top. 3 times 5 is going to get us 15. Now, we have proven, using a common denominator, that the fraction on the left, which was originally 3/5 and now rewritten as 12 over 20, is slightly less than the fraction on the right, originally 3/4, rewritten as 15 over 20, because 12 is less than 15. Let's look at the next couple. Number 3, we're comparing 3/5 and 2/3. Look at the text. The text says rewrite the fractions so they have the same denominator or the same numerator. Here's where I'm going to say I partially agree. Let's focus on what we just did, finding a common denominator and then rewriting one or both fractions to have that common denominator. Here it's been worked out for us. Looking at 5 and 3, we're going to start with the larger denominator, which is 5. Well, we're going to ask ourselves, does 5 work for 3? In other words, can I take 3 and multiply it by something to get 5? 3, 6, 9, 12. No, I can't. 5's out, but don't give up on 5. Now we're going to go through our multiples of 5 until we find one that also works for 3. 5, 10, 15, 20. Wait a minute. 15. Ding, 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 ding. We have a winner. 15 is the lowest common multiple. And I call that the LCM, lowest common multiple that 5 and 3 share, of 5 and 3. In other words, if you list out your times facts for 5 and list out your times facts for 3, 15 is the lowest number that's going to appear on both of those lists. And on this paper, the work has been finished for us. If we start with a 5, a denominator of 5, and we want to rewrite the fraction of a denominator of 15, we're going to multiply the bottom by 3. And what we do to the bottom, we must also do to the top, multiply by 3. So here we have shown how 3/5 gets rewritten as 9/15. And then over here, 2/3, if we start with a denominator of 3 and want to end up with 15, we're going to multiply by 5. What we do to the bottom, we must also do to the top. And we have shown how 2/3 gets rewritten as 10/15. 9 is less than 10. Therefore, 3/5 is slightly less than 2/3. Okay, looking at number 4, I'm going to use my permanent marker, my Sharpie, and strike out the same part of it, because sometimes the book tries to give multiple ways of arriving at a destination, of completing a task. And I'll tell you what, experience has shown me choices are good, but sometimes if you've got a winning strategy or a winning path, just go with it. And to me, when we're talking about fractions, we're talking about comparing them and eventually adding and subtracting them also. The common denominator is the way to go. So in this case, and actually, I'm going to take my Sharpie and get rid of this junk too. Out of here. 3/8 versus 1/4. The denominators don't match, so we need to find a common denominator. We'll look at the two denominators given to us and start with the larger one. 8. The first question we ask is, does 8 work for 4? In other words, can I take 4 and multiply it by something to get 8? Yes, I can. Yes, I can. 8 is a multiple of 4. That means that 8 can work as my common denominator. And that means I don't need to do anything to 3/8 because it already has 8 as its denominator. I simply need to rewrite 1/4 to show it as having a denominator of 8. Let's do that. If I start with 1/4 and I want to rewrite it as something over 8, what I do to the bottom, multiply by 2, must do to the top, multiply by 2. 1 times 2, of course, is 2. And here in one step is all it took to show that 3/8 is, well, 3 is greater than 2. Therefore, in this case, 3/8 is greater than the original fraction 1/4. Number 5, the denominators actually already match. So we simply see that 7 is less than 8. Done. Number 6, the denominators do not match. We've got a 6 and we've got an 8. Start with the larger of the two first, which is 8. Ask ourselves the question, is 8 a multiple of 6? In other words, can I take 6 and multiply it by something to get 8? No. Don't give up on 8. Just go through your multiples of 8 until you find one that works for 6. 8, 16, 24, 32. Wait a minute, Mr. Verbacher. Ding, 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 ding. 24 works, because if we also made a list of the multiples of 6, 6, 12, 18, 24, we would see that 24 is the lowest common multiple that they both share. Now, we'll simply rewrite 5/6 as something over 24. And we will rewrite 5/8 as something over 24. On the left side, what we do to the bottom, multiply by 4. We must also do to the top, multiply by 4. And we get 20/24. On the right, what we do to the bottom, multiply by 3. We must also do to the top, multiply by 3. And we can see 20 is greater than 15. Therefore, 5/6 is greater than 5/8. The last two on this page I'm going to go through a little quicker, because at this point, hopefully, the steps needed to use or to find and use the common denominator are becoming more familiar. I'm going to look at my two denominators, 3 and 9. I'm going to start with the larger one, the 9. I'm going to ask myself, will the 9 work for 3? In other words, can I take 3 and multiply by something to get 9? Yes, I can. Therefore, 9 can work as my common denominator. Therefore, I don't need to touch 2/9. It already has the denominator I want. I simply need to rewrite 1/3 as something over 9. I'll multiply the bottom by 3. Therefore, I'll multiply the top by 3. 3/9 is going to be greater than 2/9. Over here, 3/8 is being compared to 5/12. 12 is the larger of the two. 12 on its own will not work for 8, but I'm not going to give up on 12. I'm going to go through my multiples of 12. 12, 24, 36. Wait a minute. 24. 24 works. I'm going to rewrite both of these fractions as having a common denominator of 24. On the left, what I do to the bottom, multiply by 3. I'm going to do to the top, multiply by 3. 3 times 3 becomes 9. 3/8 gets rewritten as 9 over 24. Over here on the right, what I do to the bottom, multiply by 2. I must do to the top, multiply by 2. 5 times 2 gets me 10. Therefore, 3/8 is slightly less than 5/12.